My name is Elena Marlowe, 26 years old. I had built my savings slowly, almost stubbornly, as if each dollar tucked away was a brick in the wall between me and the chaos I grew up in. For years, I worked late shifts at the cafe, declined invitations to nights out, and wore the same winter coat for 3 seasons in a row because it still kept me warm. My dream wasn't glamorous, a modest down payment for a home, just a place with walls I could call mine. Not rented, not borrowed, not shared. Mine. Every cent in that account was earned with sacrifice, and I guarded it like it was the only thing standing between me and the life my parents seemed determined to drag me into. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. That morning, I opened my banking app out of habit. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I like to check once a week, reassuring myself that everything I had bled for was still there, safe. But as I scrolled through the transactions, my eyes snagged on one line that felt wrong, like a scratch across clean glass. Withdrawal 3,000. For a moment, I just stared, numb. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it echoing in my temples. 3,000 wasn't pocket change. It was months of double shifts, of turning down vacations, of saying no to myself over and over again. I clicked into the transaction details, praying it was some sort of glitch. Maybe a bank error, maybe even fraud, something I could fix with a phone call and a frozen card. But then I saw the description, external transfer. A cold wave washed over me. My hands began to tremble. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had moved my money. I checked the linked accounts, and there it was, my parents' names. For a long moment, the room blurred, and I could barely breathe. I thought about closing the app, pretending I hadn't seen it, because facing the truth felt unbearable. But denial wouldn't bring the money back. My thumb hovered over my mother's number before I pressed call. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Hey, sweetie, what's up?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "Mom, did you take money from my savings account?" There was a pause, brief, but telling. Then her tone shifted into something almost casual. "Oh, you saw that." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles ached. "So it was you." "It's not a big deal," she said quickly, her voice too light, too rehearsed. "We just needed to borrow some for your brother's trip. We were going to pay it back." I blinked, my brain scrambling to catch up. "What, Jason's trip?" She repeated it as if it were obvious. "Yes, you know how important this is for him. He and his friends are going to Thailand for 3 weeks. He was short on money." My chest burned. "So you figured you could steal from me?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she huffed, her irritation seeping through. "It was just sitting there. Just sitting there. As if it wasn't 3 years of my life, as if it was forgotten cash in a drawer, not the one lifeline I had carved out for myself." "When were you planning to tell me?" My voice was shaking. "We weren't going to take much," she rushed on. "Just enough to help him out. We thought we'd have it back before you even noticed." I let out a bitter laugh, sharp and ugly. "Yeah? And when exactly were you planning to pay it back?" There was a pause, then her vague reply. "Soon. Your father has a bonus coming up at work." "You took $3,000 and you didn't think I'd notice?" Her tone snapped, like a mask cracking. "Well, it's not like you needed it right now. You're always saving, always putting money away for the future. What about your family? What about your brother?" My jaw tightened until it hurt. "Jason is 25 years old. If he can't afford a trip, maybe he shouldn't be going." "Don't talk about your brother like that," she shot back, her voice sharp. "He works hard." I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. Worked hard? Jason had never worked for anything. I was the one who got a job at 16, who balanced school with late nights at a diner, who bought my own textbooks in college while he dropped out twice without consequence. Jason always had a safety net. Me? I was the safety net. "Put it back," I said, my voice low, clipped, dangerous. "I want it back. Now." Her tone cooled. "I don't appreciate how you're speaking to me." "I don't appreciate being robbed," I snapped. She sighed, the sharp, exasperated kind that told me I was being difficult. "We'll put it back, okay? Just give us a little time. You don't need to make such a big deal out of this." "A little time," I repeated, disbelief coating every syllable. "Right. Like I'm supposed to trust you now." Her defensiveness sharpened. "You don't need to threaten us." "I shouldn't have to," I said, and before she could speak again, I hung up. That night, I moved every last cent into a new account with only my name attached. As the transfer processed, I thought I would feel relief, but instead a pit opened in my stomach. because I knew this wasn't the end. People like my parents, they always come back when they need more. The memory reel started playing without my permission. 16 years old, working greasy shifts at the diner to save for a rusted old car. Jason, 2 years later, unwrapping keys to a brand new car with a bow on it. I had scraped together pennies for textbooks. Jason dropped out twice and still got second chances. And through it all, my mother's refrain, "You're just more responsible. That's why we don't worry about you." At 16, I mistook it for a compliment. Now I saw it for what it was, neglect dressed up as praise. You don't need help, but Jason does. You don't deserve support, but Jason does. We will always prioritize him over you. And now, my hard-earned savings had been rebranded as extra money sitting around. Money Jason deserved more than me. I should have known. I should have guarded harder. But even then, I realized moving the money wasn't a true solution. Because if they were desperate enough to steal once, what would stop them from trying again? The thought chilled me as I turned off the light that night. I had always been the responsible one, the strong one, the one who could be trusted to survive without help. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. I wish I could say that $3,000 was the first time my parents had crossed a line with me. But the truth is, it was just the first time the theft had been so obvious, so undeniable, written in black and white on my bank statement. The pattern had been there my whole life. Jason had always been the center of gravity in our family, the one everything bent toward. He was the golden boy who could do no wrong, even when he failed, especially when he failed. And me? I was the one who picked up the pieces, quietly, invisibly, without recognition. I still remember being 16, elbows deep in dishwater at the diner, scrubbing plates until my hands cracked, just to save enough for a used car. It rattled and coughed like it was on life support, but it was mine. I had earned every sputtering mile. 2 years later, Jason turned 18 and walked outside to find a shiny new car in the driveway, bow and all. He hadn't saved a dime for it. He hadn't needed to. College was the same story. I pieced together scholarships and worked part-time, covering my textbooks and rent with whatever scraps were left after tuition. Jason, meanwhile, enrolled, dropped out, re-enrolled, dropped out again. No consequences. Just soft words from Mom. He's still finding himself. I had always been the one who didn't need help. My mother said it with pride in her voice, like I was some badge she could wear. "You're just so responsible, Elena. That's why we don't worry about you." Back then, I smiled and took it as praise. Now I understood what it really meant. You're on your own. He isn't. That realization festered like a bruise, and in the weeks after I moved my savings, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone would buzz and I'd feel a pang of dread, half expecting to see either of my parents' names light up the screen. It took 3 months. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was still at work. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, a sense of inevitability, told me to pick up. "Hey, kiddo!" My dad's voice came through, lighter than usual, strained with forced cheer. "How's work?" I cut through the small talk. "What do you need, Dad?" There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. "Listen, your mom and I are in a bit of a situation. Nothing serious, just we need a little help." My stomach sank. My pen slipped from my fingers and rolled across my desk. "Help," I repeated flatly. "Yeah, you know how things have been tight. Your mom's cards are backed up a little, and Jason's been, well, he's been having a rough patch. We just need some breathing room. Nothing crazy." I closed my eyes, fighting to keep my voice calm. "How much?" "A couple thousand," he said quickly, as though the speed might soften the blow. I almost laughed. The sound that bubbled up in my chest was bitter, jagged. "A couple thousand. You mean on top of the 3 you already took?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, in that careful, fatherly tone he always used when he wanted to reframe reality, he said, "Sophie," and then corrected himself. "Elena, don't be like that." "Like what?" I asked. "Like someone who doesn't enjoy being stolen from?" His sigh was heavier this time, tinged with frustration. "You're making this into something it's not. We just need some help. Families help each other." The word family hit me like a slap. Family. Where had that family been when I needed help with tuition? Where had it been when I worked myself into exhaustion while Jason played video games all summer? Where had it been when my first car broke down and I walked 2 miles in the rain because there was no one to call? "You keep saying family," I whispered. "When have you ever helped me?" There was silence on the line. I could almost hear his jaw tighten. "That's not fair," he said finally. We raised you. We gave you everything. Everything. The word echoed in my skull like a cruel joke. I thought of every late night, every missed outing, every sacrifice I had made, just to have a small piece of independence. They hadn't given me that. I had taken it for myself, in spite of them. You didn't give me everything, I said softly. You gave Jason everything. The pause stretched, thick and suffocating. Then his voice hardened. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude, it's not you. We raised you better than this. Raised me better. Another twist of the knife. Because in his eyes, being better meant being compliant, quiet, willing to sacrifice for everyone else without complaint. I pressed my forehead into my palm, my voice low but steady. I'm not giving you money, Dad. Not this time. The silence on the other end was sharp, angry. Then his tone cracked, shifting from disappointment to something colder, almost threatening. Don't be selfish, Elena. We're your family. We've always been there for you. I laughed, bitter and broken. Have you? I hung up before he could answer, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling as the weight of it settled over me. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a bank account, a solution to their mistakes. And the worst part was, I knew this wouldn't be the last time. People like my parents didn't stop once they'd crossed that line. They always came back, a little bolder each time. I should have felt stronger after saying no. Instead, I felt haunted by the echo of his words. Don't be selfish. Families help each other. A question I didn't want to ask lodged itself in my chest. Was I wrong? Was I being cruel for holding on so tightly to what I had earned? But then I remembered Jason's laughter at family dinners, the way he leaned back and expected life to serve him. I remembered Mom's eyes, soft for him, sharp for me, and I remembered the cold certainty in my father's tone when he said I owed them. No, I wasn't cruel. I was finally protecting myself. Still, as I drifted off that night, one thought lingered, dark and suffocating. If they were willing to cross this line now, what else were they hiding from me? The silence after my father's call didn't last long. It never did. My parents were like waves against the shore, relentless, certain that if they just kept pushing, I'd eventually give in. But this time, the next blow didn't come from them. It came from Jason. He called me one Friday afternoon, just as I was walking out of work. His name lit up my phone screen, and for a moment I debated letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity, no, dread, got the better of me. Hey, sis, he drawled, as if nothing was wrong. Listen, Mom and Dad told me you're being kinda difficult about the money. The audacity of his tone made my skin prickle. Difficult? I echoed. Yeah, he said casually. Look, I get it. You've always been tight with your cash, but this is important, Elena. You know I don't ask for much. I nearly choked on a laugh. You don't ask because Mom and Dad give you everything before you have to. There was a pause, and then his voice hardened. Wow, so that's how it is? You're gonna hold a few $1,000 over me when you're sitting on a whole pile of savings? It's not a pile, Jason. It's years of sacrifice. And you think your vacation or your debts matter more than the roof I'm trying to build over my own head? God, you sound so selfish, he snapped. You're 26 years old, living like a nun just to hoard money in the bank. Don't you think it's time you gave back to the family? Something inside me broke. Gave back? I hissed. When have you ever given anything, Jason, to anyone? His silence was louder than any retort. Then, low and venomous, he muttered, No wonder Mom and Dad are so disappointed in you lately. I hung up before I could hear another word, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might faint. That weekend, I didn't answer my parents' calls. I needed space, air, distance from the suffocating weight of their entitlement. But distance wasn't something they allowed for long. 2 weeks later, I made the mistake of attending Sunday dinner. It had always been Mom's unspoken rule. Attendance wasn't optional, not unless you wanted to face weeks of cold silence and passive-aggressive texts. Part of me hoped being face-to-face might diffuse the tension. Maybe if they looked me in the eye, they'd remember I wasn't just a wallet. The table was set as if nothing were wrong. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, Mom's famous lemon pie. The house smelled like my childhood, but the atmosphere was brittle, charged, like dry wood waiting for a spark. Jason was already at the table when I walked in, smirking as if he'd won a battle I hadn't agreed to fight. Dad greeted me with forced warmth, Mom with a smile too thin to be genuine. We made it through small talk, the weather, work, some neighborhood gossip, before the inevitable shift. So, Dad said, setting down his fork, Have you thought more about helping us out? The room went silent, except for the ticking clock on the wall. I forced myself to meet his eyes. I already gave you my answer. Jason leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Come on, Elena. You're seriously going to sit there and act like you can't spare anything? Look around. Mom and Dad have done everything for us. And you can't even step up when things get rough? Things get rough? My voice cracked like a whip. Jason, you've never once paid for the rough. You've always handed it off to someone else, usually me. Don't, Mom cut in sharply, her tone protective, maternal, but only for him. Don't talk to your brother like that. I laughed, bitter and hollow. Like what? Honestly? Should I list it all out? His new car at 18, his tuition wasted, his endless second chances, paid for by you while I scraped and bled just to get through school? Jason's smirk faded, replaced by a glare. You're jealous. The word slammed into me, absurd and cruel. Jealous? Of you? Yeah, he said with quiet venom. Jealous that Mom and Dad actually love me enough to help me. Maybe if you weren't so cold, they'd feel the same way about you. The air in the room seemed to vanish. For a second, I couldn't breathe. That was it. The truth behind every sacrifice, every lopsided decision. Love rationed out unequally. Him overflowing, me barely a drop. Dad cleared his throat, stepping in like a referee. This isn't about the past. This is about now. Your mom and I are in a tight spot, and Jason's trying to get his life together. You have the means to help, Elena. Why wouldn't you? My voice trembled with fury. Because every time I help, it's never enough. Because you never pay it back. Because you don't see me as your daughter. You see me as your ATM. The silence was thunderous. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Jason's face twisted in mock pity. Dad's eyes hardened. You've changed, Dad said finally. This isn't the Elena we raised. We taught you to take care of family. No, I whispered. You taught me to take care of Jason. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and inescapable. Dinner ended abruptly after that. Plates were cleared in silence, pie untouched. I left before the dishes were finished, the chill of the night air biting harder than usual as I walked to my car. But even as I drove away, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they ached, one thought haunted me. Their desperation wasn't about Jason's trip anymore. It wasn't even about credit card debt or a rough patch. The way Dad's eyes had darted, the way Mom had shut me down so quickly, the way Jason had smirked with that false confidence. They were hiding something bigger, and I was going to find out what. I didn't start with a confrontation. I started with evidence. On Monday, during my lunch break, I pulled my credit report. It felt paranoid, dramatic even. But the dread that had been chewing at me since dinner wouldn't let go. I downloaded the file and skimmed down the list of accounts, expecting to see my student loans, my small credit card, my car note. What I didn't expect was a personal loan I had never taken out, opened 9 months earlier, with 3 late payments in the last quarter. My hands went cold. I reread the line 3 times, my eyes burning. The loan balance sat heavy on the screen. The lender's name was unfamiliar, but the address on file was my parents' home. I called the lender. The rep was careful, neutral. Yes, the loan was in my name. Yes, the email on file belonged to my mother. No, they couldn't email statements to my work address. I'd have to verify with a code sent to the email on file. When I said that email was not mine, the rep's voice softened in a way that made my chest ache. She gave me a general disputes address, advised me to file a fraud alert, and apologize for the inconvenience, as if the word could contain what was unraveling inside me. I left work early, the world outside my windshield a smear of winter light. I didn't call ahead. I drove straight to my parents' house and let myself in with the key they still insisted I keep for emergencies. Mom was at the kitchen counter, sorting mail. She looked up, startled, then pasted on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Elena, what a surprise! Where are the letters addressed to me? I asked. Her smile twitched. What letters? The ones you've been hiding, I said, voice steady in the way a cliff edge is steady. From a lender I never heard of, about a loan I never took. She stilled. For a fraction of a second, her gaze flicked toward the drawer beside the fridge. Then she let out a breath that sounded like surrender. We were going to tell you, she said softly. Like you told me about the $3,000. I opened the drawer. There they were, a neat stack of envelopes with my name, going back months. Statements, past due notices, one bright red final warning. My father walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He took in the scene. the open drawer, the letters in my hand, the fury on my face, and didn't bother pretending confusion. His jaw tightened. Elena, let me explain. Explain how you took out a loan in my name? My voice shook. Explain how you used my social without my consent? Explain how you linked it to Mom's email so I wouldn't see it? He flinched, barely. We were going to pay it, he said, the words clipped, defensive. We had a plan. We just needed time. What plan? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, the only plan was to keep me in the dark while you sunk me with you. Jason wandered in then, barefoot, scrolling on his phone. He glanced up, smirk ready, then registered the tension and pocketed it. What's going on? Your sister is upset, Dad said evenly, about something that's already being handled. I turned to Jason. Do you know what they did? He shrugged. If it's about the money, you're overreacting. It's not like you're poor. My laughter came out raw. They opened a loan in my name, with my information, my credit. Tell me again how I'm overreacting. Jason's smirk faltered, then hardened into a sneer. It was for the family. You act like you're not part of this family. Mom's composure crumbled. We were drowning, she blurted, eyes shining. Your father lost the contract last year. The mortgage was late twice. Jason, he had some things to take care of. We needed a bridge. A bridge? I repeated. Is that what you call draining me? Dad's voice turned steel. Watch your tone. I set the letters on the counter with surgical precision. No, you watch yours. I pointed at the stack. This isn't a borrow. This is fraud. You forged my signature. You changed my contact information. You hid the mail. And when I asked about the $3,000, you called me selfish. The room vibrated with silence. The kitchen clock ticked like a metronome for disaster. Dad rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking older, smaller. I made a judgment call, he said hoarsely. I thought I could fix it before you ever felt a ripple. The contract. He broke off, swallowed. It fell through. We were behind. Your mother's cards were maxed. There were charges. It got away from us. My gaze snapped to Mom. Charges? She folded into herself, shame and defensiveness warring on her face. Your brother made some mistakes, Philo, she whispered. He got into something. It wasn't his fault. Jason's jaw tightened. Don't drag me into this. I stared at him. Sports betting? Payday loans? What was it? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The shame flicker in Mom's eyes told me enough. I took care of it, Dad said quickly, as if the speed could outrun the truth. That's what the loan was for. Consolidation. We were paying it. Then the bonus didn't come through, and you came for me, I finished, because you knew I had what you didn't. Something inside me went very, very still. The little girl who had accepted scraps while her brother feasted. The college student who had smiled through exhaustion so no one would see how alone she was. The 26-year-old who thought moving her money would build a wall high enough. They all aligned into a single, sharp point of clarity. I filed a fraud alert, I said quietly. I froze my credit this morning. I'm disputing the loan. I'll be sending the lender copies of my signature, my ID, and a notarized statement. Mom gasped, Elena, don't! They'll open an investigation. Good, I said. Dad stiffened. You would do that to your own parents? You did this to me first. Jason scoffed. Come on, you're not going to get them in legal trouble. I'm going to protect myself, I said. If there are consequences, those belong to the people who created them. Mom reached for me, as if a touch could rewind the last 9 months. We raised you, she pleaded. We did our best. I know, I said, and the grief in my throat surprised me. I know you did your best with what you had, but somewhere along the line, our best became taken from me because I wouldn't break as easily as he did. Jason bristled. Say that again. Break, I repeated, meeting his eyes. I am done breaking, so you can stay soft. Dad's mouth thinned. What do you want, Elena? A pound of flesh? We fix the loan, we pay back the money, we move on. Family. I want boundaries, I said. A written repayment plan for the $3,000 you took, signed by both of you, with monthly installments and dates. I want you to contact the lender and admit the email is not mine. I want every piece of mail with my name forwarded to my address. And I want no more requests for money. Not one. Silence pulsed. The house seemed to hold its breath. And if we don't agree, Dad asked softly. Then my next call is a police report, I said, and heard in my voice something I'd never allowed before, the sound of someone choosing herself. Mom began to cry. Not the delicate tears she used to draw sympathy, but a ragged, cornered sound that came from somewhere deep. We didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said, and meant it. You meant to use me, and maybe that's worse. No one moved. The lemon cleaner scent of the kitchen turned sour in my mouth. Somewhere in the living room, the television murmured to no one. Sunlight filtered across the table, catching the edge of the final warning like a blade. I gathered the letters, slipped them into my bag, and picked up my keys. I'll email the repayment terms tonight, I said. Sign them by Friday. Dad squared his shoulders. And if we need more time? You've already taken enough. I walked out to the driveway. The sky had the thin, fragile blue of late afternoon. Air bit at my lungs. I stopped at my car door and looked back at the house I grew up in. The curtains twitched. A shadow moved. For a second, grief punched through my sternum so hard I nearly bent. People think the hardest part of leaving is the anger. It isn't. Anger is easy. It keeps you warm. The hardest part is the sadness. The quiet understanding that the version of family you kept trying to resuscitate is gone, and the one that remains was never safe for you to begin with. That night, I drafted the repayment plan and sent it. I filed the dispute, attached scans, made a copy for myself. I changed my passwords, updated my bank security questions, and moved my emergency fund to a new institution altogether. Then I turned off my phone and sat on the floor of my apartment in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the pulse of my own breathing, the silence that, for the first time, felt like peace. Days later, an envelope arrived at my place. Inside were the signed repayment terms. Dad's signature was sharp, controlled. Mom's wavered. There was no note. It wasn't an apology. It was a boundary acknowledged. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post a speech about choosing myself. I ate dinner. I washed dishes. I paid my rent. I read for an hour and slept through the night without dreaming of red-stamped envelopes or my mother's drawer full of secrets. In the morning, I made coffee and stood by the window. The city moved below. Buses, dog walkers, a woman jogging with a neon beanie. Life continued, indifferent and generous. And I realized that I hadn't just protected my money. I had protected my future. Because to them, I had always been the responsible one, the reliable one, the uncomplaining one, their emergency fund in human form. I didn't know what we would be to each other from now on. Maybe something smaller, maybe something honest. But I knew who I would be to myself. Not their bridge, not their bank, not their scapegoat. Just Elena, finally enough for me.